Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. I am your host, Neil Horowitz. You can find me on Twitter at NJH287, also on LinkedIn, where I post more content. The website, as always, is dsmsports.net, where you can find more content and an archive of episodes. And you can also find other episodes and future episodes on follow along, subscribe on your preferred podcast platform. Just a fantastic show for you guys today. It is the third of my consecutive podcasts with folks in the soccer space. Just such a privilege on the podcast today. I'm going to be joined by Cody Sharrett. He is the social media manager for US Soccer. That's right. He is really leading the way and setting the scene for US Soccer as the US men's national team gets set to play in the World Cup. Just really cool to hear from Cody all about US Soccer, about how they manage just a huge operation that has to scale up for major events. It's not just the U.S. men's national team, it's U.S. women, it's youth, it's cerebral palsy teams, it's deaf teams, it's futsal. You're going to hear everything and anything. You're also going to hear a little bit about Cody's background. He came up working for the Columbus Crew in Major League Soccer, also spent time in the NBA and WNBA with the Minnesota Timberwolves and Minnesota Lynx, as well as with the Portland Trail Blazers. Cody has just done so much. He has so much good knowledge to share, great stories you're going to hear, and really going to get you set to follow along with the U.S. men's national team and all their social platforms as the World Cup kicks off. So stick around for that chat with Cody because you're going to love it. And just a couple of ththings before we get to that interview. First is, of course, the last week, depending on when you're listening to this, has been quite eventful in the world of Twitter. Every day has been eventful since Elon Musk took over Twitter, but there was definitely a period, and there still may well be a period, where we worry about the fate of Twitter as engineers quit, as the staff has been gutted, and we look ahead to see if Twitter, frankly, is going to eventually shut down or crash at least, have a period of downtime as they work through this new lean staff. And just it made you think for a little bit. Yes, there was a lot of farewell Twitter messages and what Twitter has meant to people in their careers, their relationships. But it also drove some good conversation, at least with my group and my peers and my friends around what could replace Twitter. What role does Twitter play in the greater sports space, and what can take the place of that potentially, or at least be a substitute for it. And we think about what are the unique value props of Twitter. And it's oftentimes a place where news is dropped, where news is discovered, and where conversation is happening constantly, where there's quick daily or updates minute to minute. It truly is the place for microblogs where fans can converse, where teams can drop every little piece of news they want to have and really reach their fans on a very, very frequent basis. Even if it's not all their fans, the fans they do reach on Twitter, they reach in a very frequent basis, and it's a place where you can have a voice as well. And when we talk about developing voice personality, you're going to hear a little bit about that with in the chat with Cody in the NBA, especially in his time in the NBA, about developing a personality. And oftentimes when we talk about voice, a lot of it does get activated, get manifested on Twitter. So how can you replace that? How can you find a place to really engage fans in that same way that Twitter does? So there's not to offer any sort of solution by any means, and it looks like we won't need one, hopefully, as Twitter continues to live on. But it made you think about what could be different on our own real estate, in our apps. Where else or how else can we illustrate and demonstrate and activate a voice and personality? So some good fodder for thought. And one more thing that was just really cool, real quick, before we get to the conversation with Cody, is you're going to hear Cody tell a couple of anecdotes in both the interview as well as the direct kick segment or the set play segment, the quick hitters. And he talks about how he heard directly from players who truly expressed their appreciation for what he and his colleagues did on the social media side, on the content side. And just it gave me goosebumps hearing it. So I want to make sure you listen up for that, because it's just really cool to hear those moments when players truly show their appreciation for what you do and that you guys are truly part of the same team. So stick around, just a fantastic conversation with Cody Sharrett, social media manager for US Soccer. Right back with today's guest, and I am so excited for today's guest. We wanted to talk to him for a while. We've already been jiving a little bit offline. Now it's time to talk to Cody Sharrett. He is the social media manager for US Soccer. You might have heard of them. Welcome to the podcast today, Cody.
I heard, Neil, that this was like the SMS Sports version of WTF. So it is my honor to be here with the Mark Maron of SM Sports.
I will take that as a huge, huge compliment. We are not in a garage, but I'll do my best to be like Mark Maron a little bit as a WTF listener myself. But Cody, we are so psyched to talk to you today. It is right the perfect time of year because it's about to be a World Cup. We're about to watch the men's soccer team for the U.S. hopefully go on a run. Women's soccer next year, and you are at the helm of U.S. soccer when it comes to social media. And just so psyched to pick your brain. But before we get into the meat of our discussion, we want to hear about you. You have an incredible background. You're still a young man yourself, but have done a lot. So tell us about where you were, where you've been, how you got to U.S. soccer, and any tips for folks that want to do what you do.
I'm flattered that you think I'm young because I feel older and older with every passing day. But yeah, I've been at this professionally like 10 years, which is crazy. Graduated from Indiana University in 2012. Actually accepted my first job before I graduated and moved from Bloomington to Columbus, Ohio, to work with the Columbus Crew of MLS. I started out as their digital content producer was my role there. And, you know, it was just as like teams started to really take social media seriously. It was a lot of like, now looking back on it, like, why were we tweeting literal play-by-play of every MLS game, every MLS reserve game? Looking back at the Instagrams, it's phone photos that are super like blurry and like filter caked on.
Relatable.
But yeah. And I worked a lot on their the infancy of their social media accounts, and also served as kind of a team insider beat writer role for thecrew.com.
Oh, super cool.
Yeah, did that for about 3 years. My boss TJ left, and we continued to flirt long distance when he left for the Portland Trailblazers, and then eventually he created a role and brought me over there. I started out like as kind of this secondary digital content person that for the Blazers, but the primary content creator, I guess, for the Moda Center and Rose Quarter properties. So like I tell everybody, I got to go to like millions of concerts for free and just like take videos with my phone. And that was like, at that point, like what could be better? Like you're going to see Paul McCartney, Springsteen, The Who. Now I sound old. But Foo Fighters was one of the best shows I ever saw.
Oh, wow.
Worked for us when Dave Grohl had the throne, broke his foot. Yeah. And, like you even see the bad, like Bieber, like I've never seen anybody like so not into performing, but like got to see Madonna, Florence and the Machine, like you name it. Like saw Ed Sheeran twice because I had to work his concerts. Shania Twain, amazing. But yeah, so like, yeah, I got to work a lot of concerts, but also like every NBA game as kind of like the secondary content person, secondary web writer for the Blazers. And you know, that first year, I got there in May, and then July 1st comes and like they lose Robin Lopez, they lose Wes Matthews, they lose LaMarcus Aldridge, they lose Nick Batum, and I think the preseason prediction over under was 26 wins for that team.
Oh,
but like that's the year I think Damian Lillard became like a fortified star, and CJ McCollum was most improved player. Just a really fun, young and hungry team to work with Dame CJ, Noah Vonleh, Alan Crabb really broke out that season. Mason Plumlee, loved Mason Plumlee. As you know, that starting center that could pass. Who else was on that team? Gerald Henderson was my favorite player on the team, just because he would start stuff with every team. And that was like back in the day where like you would clickbait people on social, like every scuffle that happened in an NBA game, and that would be your biggest like click driver. Back in 2015-16. So yeah, they went to the playoffs, so exceeded expectations. Things broke their way in the playoffs, and Chris Paul got hurt, Blake Griffin got hurt, and they advanced to the second round against the Warriors. And that series was just fun, like experiencing Roracle Like there is no better atmosphere in the NBA than Oakland during the playoffs, during the Splash Brothers heyday. Like, yeah, it was heartbreaking for working for the Blazers at that point, but so much fun. But yeah, eventually I became the like social media digital content lead there. A few years later, moved closer back to Minnesota, and did similar roles for the Timberwolves and Lynx. You know, I got there when Jimmy Butler was there, and things were hunky dory. And then you learn how to post through it with a few losing seasons, and then last season there was Anthony Edwards' rookie season, and honestly, other than Ja Morant, there is no more entertaining, exciting player in the league than Anthony Edwards, and that was kind of fun to witness the beginning stages of that. And then last November I came here to Chicago, started working for US Soccer. I always said, even while working in the NBA, which is like the most social friendly league, is that a lifelong dream, a lifelong goal of mine is to work in a World Cup. And we're 20-ish days away from that, and like every day it's like more stress on me, like freaking out. But I'm so excited to go to Qatar in a couple weeks, and Australia, New Zealand next summer with the US women's national team. But like starting here last year, it was like crazy. I went to Soccer House the first day. That's our old office. Like, we used to work in an old mansion down in the Prairie District. Mm-hmm. And the second day I flew to Cincinnati because it was the USA Mexico game. So really thrown into the fire at US Soccer. So it's been a fun year. Coming up on a year. Actually, I moved to Chicago November 1st. So gonna celebrate, pop some champagne this week. But yeah, it's been so fun. Like I said, lifelong dream to get to go to a World Cup.
Yeah, I gotta say, I always love hearing those stories and those goosebumps feelings of like the fact that if you could tell whoever 10-year-old Cody that you're gonna be working a World Cup, like just you're about to experience that dream, man, and it's really freaking cool, and I'm so happy for you and happy for us to be able to live through vicariously through the US Soccer social handles.
Yeah, that's like the main goal is like I everywhere I've been, like the goal has been like your social handle is the team's social handle, not my personal social handle. I tweet about Taylor Swift or post about Taylor Swift more than sports. But like I want that the team's handle to be almost like it's the biggest fan. Like I know in some ways that just can't happen, but like I want it to feel like the person that runs this account is sitting next to you at the bar that you're watching at.
Yeah. Actually, I not to take us too much into the weeds right off the bat here, but let's touch on something on that real quick, because it's been a bit of a theme as Instagram stories became a bigger deal some years ago, as even with Snapchat to some extent when it had its run, I guess, Snapchat stories, and now TikTok, where it's almost normal or even like beneficial to have a face, like someone to kind of be there. Like it's almost like you have a friend who just happens to be at the World Cup and is taking you around and you're seeing what they see. Like, is that like, do you see that as something that is good for, is what sports teams and leagues, organizations and teams should be leaning into, of like, this person's going to be your tour guide for the content, for the event? Or is it really like, no, this is the brand speaking to you and we don't want to put a face on necessarily?
I think it's a mixture of both. Like you still have to be that brand, like ambassador, I guess. But like, I obviously don't want my face on any US Soccer, like US Soccer. I don't want anybody to see what I look like because it's not good. It's not great. But like that behind the scenes look of it are like, like the Tiny Mike content right now is huge, and like getting like. We were in London last month, and like getting players' reactions as soon as they walk onto the field at Wembley Stadium for training. Like that's something just only a person in my role can provide. Like, yeah. And like it was just cool to see like Lindsey Horan almost like you can almost see like the chills she has like as she's talking about like just being inside Wembley Stadium. Yeah. So like, yeah, you're, I guess, as the brand voice, I look at it as it's like, oh yeah, my best friend is there with the team, and look at what they're sending me.
Yeah,
almost, or like, look what my friend posted on their story.
totally. Well, I want to bounce back to your career story, because something that's really stood out was the fact that in multiple stops, you weren't just producing video content or shooting or whatever you think about as more traditional digital content roles, but you were writing too. And I think that's a really something that we don't talk about enough in the space, that writing skills are really so important, whether you're writing an article or you're writing an Instagram caption or you're writing a short pithy tweet or a TikTok comment or whatever it might be. Like, do you find that particularly did help you? And like, how does that play into, even like, how much thought do you put into writing those day-to-day things that we post so often? But are you thinking about like, well, this word is going to work better than this word, and you spend time thinking about Instagram captions and tweet copy?
No doubt. Like, I was a writer first, so that helped. And like, I don't want to say I'm lazy, but like, I'm always like economical with my words. So like, like, keep it short and sweet, get to the point. Like, people don't want to read a novel on social media, but like, when you say like thinking about a caption or whatever, like when I used to in the NBA, like I would shoot almost every game from the floor, like with the Sony A9 high quality camera. Like I really picked up photography, like both like as a skill and passion. Like, I loved it. Like, and I would just think of things to like take pictures of just for the caption. I'm trying to think of an example of that right now, but like, you know, like whether it's a pun with a player's name or just like stalking out like a photo of Karl Anthony Towns and Steph Curry, like knowing just like I have to get that shot just because I know that's going to be the biggest driver post game if we lose this game against the Warriors. So yeah, I used to think about that stuff all the time, and I still do. But like, yeah, I would say like I started as a writer, but you know, some of it just comes so quick. Like, and I guess that's why like I feel like I've done a good job in my roles, is because like I think of things like that. Like, not everything has to be like planned out in months in advance. Like, sometimes like social media, like as much as you want to put out proactive content, like social media is very reactive still. Like, you're reacting to memes or you're reacting to trends. Like right now it's the Spirit Halloween costume,
Right?
like meme, and like we've pitched it back and forth. I don't know if there's a tie to do it with US soccer. I saw somebody that did it with Greg Berhalter like costume, and it was very clever and funny. But yeah, it's still a very reactive thing. So like, it's not almost it's just having that thought in the moment, and like you're reacting to moments in games too. Like, you can't just sit on your hands and like think too much about a caption in a game.
Totally. Yeah, and some people are in the boat or the category where they have like a bunch of lines that they keep in their notes app on their phone, or sometimes in the drafts on tweets, and they're like, oh, I can't wait to drop this. And other times it really is like fly by the seat of your pants, and it's got to come to you at the right time based on the moment of the game, the emotion of the game, what's going on, what's trending at that time as well. And there's so much to it. I love that that thought process there.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I've had things saved in my notepad.
Totally.
Yeah, I think we all have. But yeah, I think it's more of just like thinking in the moment, like thinking quick.
And let's talk about development of voice. And you know, you were part of multiple NBA clubs as well as WNBA, and we think of NBA Twitter as like being this entity, and I don't really know how to describe it necessarily. And I think, you know, throughout your career, certainly, I think probably at the outset of your career, you've witnessed this development of voice, whether you want to call it snark or personality or whatever it might be. So like, when you first off, I guess when you made that move from Crew to Blazers, what was that process like for learning what the Blazers voice is, what NBA Twitter is, and ultimately how do we create a personality and content and fit it, have you fit into what they want to put out there.
That's funny because like in those 3 years I worked for the Crew, I really didn't watch the NBA. Like I was a Pacers fan, and like I would occasionally watch them when they played the Heat in the playoffs, but like not like pay attention to the 82 game schedule. But like the best way I can describe it is like it was through osmosis. I probably didn't show the appreciation at the time, and like we still talk occasionally, but like Chris Koivisto, like he's probably like the OG. Him, Nick Monroe, Jason out in Sacramento. Those are the OGs. But like working every day with Chris, like you just pick it up. Like it's not like I was like, well, today's lesson, I'm gonna take notes. Like we were like older brother, younger brother. Like we drove each other nuts, but like I think like now, like talking to each other, like I think we do appreciate each other. And like he's obviously out of sports now, but I think he's still at T-Mobile. But like, like I learned so much from him, and I probably haven't like expressed how much I learned from him as far as like creating a voice. And yeah, so Chris, if you're listening, thank you.
Former podcast guest Chris, and he was a tremendous podcast guest too, back in the day. And so like, what are those variables what are those levers to pull when you think about what it means to create a brand, a personality, and we look at going from like a Blazers versus a Wolves, for example. Those are two different fan bases, two different voices, personalities, perhaps two different brands. Like how does that play out in practical terms?
So like I don't want to say that I just like think like, oh, this is the voice. It's not determined by me. It's determined by the fan base.
Right.
Like when I was first in Portland, like the self-deprecating stuff worked so well. Like because like the fans would commiserate with you, like, and laugh at it, like, and then Reddit would react and be like, well, like they get it, like, but then like the team gets good, and like while the fan base still like can sympathize with the self-deprecating stuff, maybe like ownership or basketball operations, they're like, no, we're supposed to be good. We don't need this self-deprecating, like poking fun at a loss, BS, I guess. So that's kind of where things changed in Portland. But in Minnesota, like you get there and like it's a fan base that hadn't won in so long. So like you can't do the self-deprecating stuff there because they're just like so tired of it. They're like, just win a game. But then like you can joke around about certain things. Like I think one of my favorite things we ever did, and we had to pull it down 10 minutes in, was like me, Shabazz, our boss, Eric, like we were all on board with it when the Brian Colangelo burner stuff came out.
Yeah. And
we just like did a screen record of us. We created a Timberwolves burner account, and it was just like us logging off on it. And we were told to take it down within 10 minutes, but within 10 minutes, I think it already had like 400,000 views or something like that. Like, I think that's one of the funniest things we did. But then like, it's just so funny. Like whenever the Panthers coach was fired a couple weeks ago, like, and they're like, yeah, he had to have, or he tried to have influence on the social media accounts. And like, it's like, that's not unique. Like, anybody that's been in like a social media role with a team, more times than not, the coach, the GM cares. They think it influences like other teams scouting them. They think it influences players that want to sign there. They think it influences teams that they want to trade with. Like for them, it was like, well, what if like Philadelphia sees that and they don't want to make a trade with us, which they ended up doing for Jimmy Butler and Robert Covington later that year. So I guess it didn't affect it too much. but yeah, it's just kind of like funny. Like I just want to like scream to channel Gen Z. I'm in my 30s, but like it's not that deep. Like social media, it's not that deep. Like
You're not supposed to take it too seriously.
yeah, like I always say it, and like eventually maybe I hope to God like this never happens, but I'm always just like no one's dying. No one's dying because of a tweet that a basketball or a soccer team sent. Like I don't know. It's
Totally.
I don't want like yes, it's a very serious job. There's a lot of responsibility with it, but like it's mostly inconsequential in the grand scheme of life in the world.
And you could say the same thing about sports to some degree. Yes, if your team wins or loses, might affect your mood for the day, but you still can, you have your health, you have food on the table, so to speak, and hopefully a roof above your head. So you can't take it too seriously. It's meant to be fun. And you're supposed to enjoy the ride, so to speak, the ups and the downs as well.
But on the flip side of that, like where I said, like, more times than not, the coach like has things that drive them nuts that they see on your team's social media feed. The flip side of that is like being in Minnesota, working with the Lynx and Cheryl Reeve. She leaned into a lot of stuff we did. She was great. She's still one of my favorite people I've ever worked with.
Oh, I definitely want to talk a little bit Lynx with you because I really enjoyed the Lynx social over the years. But I think we hit on something interesting there of the Wolves versus Blazers. I want to make sure we have plenty of time to talk about U.S. soccer because there have so many questions there as well. But the idea of the self-deprecating stuff worked or was more suitable sometimes maybe for the Blazers because it was a team that was accustomed to winning and it wasn't like down the dumps always losing and in the lottery. Yes, the T-Wolves are much better now. Then you go to the T-Wolves and they have been accustomed to losing, and so the self-deprecating stuff is a little bit harder to have there. And so like I guess is that something that you have to keep in mind of like what works based on what the fan base is accustomed to, what they're feeling, what their expectations are. If we are performing above expectations versus below, does that mean we can take certain risks and not take other risks? But yeah, I guess how's that color your guys' strategy and thinking?
When you're winning, you can post mostly anything. Like as long as you're not like tearing down your opponent too much. Like if it's good fan fodder, like I always think it's great. Like with the Blazers, we always used to make fun of the Lakers, like because it was when they were bad. Like it was when they were a perennial lottery team, top 3 lottery team. But like I think this is the perfect transition. Like with going into the World Cup with the national team, like I feel like you cannot joke around right now. Like fans just don't want that. Like at least the vocal fan base. Like I always say, like there's 30 comments like telling you to F off or they don't want to see it, but there's like 1,000 likes. Like that the ratio just isn't there. Like or the ratio of likes to angry comments. Like why even pay attention to those comments? Like, but yeah, I feel like especially in this role that I'm in right now, like, and that's a perfect example of like when you're winning, like you can have more fun. Like the women's team, they've won the last 2 World Cups. You can have more fun with that voice than you can the men's team because frankly, like they didn't qualify in 2018 and fans are still upset about that. Fans, want, like we all do. We want our nation to do the best.
It's the idea of like win World something Cup, before you start talking trash. You gotta win something.
Yeah. So like we can't necessarily have that fun right now, but like you talk about things that you have in your back pocket. Like I have things in my back pocket. Like if we do beat England, which would be amazing, which would be great, I think that's going to be the most watched soccer game in American history on Black Friday. So like winning does affect everything, but like when you are in the lottery, like we were a lot with the Timberwolves, like the games aren't fun to post during, but like you have more fun with like just filler stuff, like doing
Yeah.
movie posters for the Oscars, like featuring players, or Halloween movies during Halloween, or Christmas movies, or just like getting in on any like meme trend is easy. And like I always throw it back to like that you were talking about when we were offline, like going into Crowd Tangle. I think that first year, like the Timberwolves were like a bottom 10 team, but you look at like engagement rate, and we were like top 5, top 3 on on Twitter or Instagram, I forget, but we were top 5 in both. And that's just like, it's like, yeah, we don't have the biggest following, but our fans like our voice. So that was
Yeah.
a cool thing to see.
Yeah, I think of you mentioned Jason earlier with the Sacramento Kings. I think they've done a good job over the years of during their struggles of having that kind of high engagement rate as well. It's kind of knowing what buttons to push with their fans and having fun with them.
You know, I hope they make the playoffs this year. Like they're at least a play-in team to me. I like the Kings.
Well, I always hope any team that's been down for a while will get back up. Hopefully.
Yeah.
Let's touch briefly on the links. Then I wanted to get into soccer. It'll be a good segue as well on kind of what does that, and the WNBA fan base has, I mean, shit, it's changed since you left the links as well, and it's grown, continues to grow. But what was that differentiating factor between a WNBA fan, a Minnesota fan, and what that fan base was like? What kind of like a strategy differed between this huge, platform that maybe the T-Wolves had versus a growing but smaller platform that the Lynx had, and different opportunities too with the players who may be more willing to take risks with you or have fun with you.
We were always like take the high road. We're the 4-time WNBA champs, but then like you'd always get like chirping from the Phoenix Mercury account, and we would always kill them. And then we would just crush them on social, like with a quote tweet or a response. Like it was so much fun with that. Like, and Cheryl was into that. But yeah, like the players are I wouldn't like, that's the thing with the NBA. The players were always like willing and like loved if there was a camera around, or like always interactive. So I don't think there was a big difference there. But yeah, I think it was a difference in strategy of just like, all right, yeah, you're the 4-time champs compared to the Wolves, who, hadn't been a winning team other than that Jimmy Butler year. But I think it was a experience that I'll never like forget or experience anything similar. Just being down in Bradenton for that the COVID season.
Yeah.
Like those players and those coaches are like family still, like, because you spend so much time together in a short amount of time, or in such a condensed area. So like there are the struggles with like women's sports, especially. I think it's gotten a little bit better, but just like getting the responses of like, get back in the kitchen, blah 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 blah. But like again, we had Cheryl lean into that. We had her record stuff at the media day and said like, yeah, I think we had one that's like, yeah, I've been in the kitchen cooking up this W, or like we had one that was like, you need to delete your account, or like, are you sure about that? Stuff like that. Like, so she leaned into it. And like responding to those type of trolls when the moment was right was a different part of the strategy with working in the WNBA.
So let's talk about how that mindset maybe is different, or maybe even that ability to relate is different on the U.S. soccer side, where you certainly don't get to spend every day next to the players quite as much as you would have in the NBA or WNBA sense. And so, like, I guess first off, before we even get into the weeds of U.S. soccer, just give us an understanding of what U.S. soccer is, all the teams that fall under the umbrella, what the goals of the organization are, and maybe a little bit of what your the social media practice looks like.
Whew, that's a lot. So yeah, we are a national governing body, the federation. So we've got the federation handles that oversees everything. We've got the 2 senior national teams, the men and the women. We've got a ton of youth teams. Like we just wrapped up the U17 Women's World Cup. Unfortunately, we got bounced out in penalties by Nigeria. Then we have, I don't know, it's continuing to grow by the year, but like we have a ton of extended national teams. So that would be the CP men's and women's team. So cerebral palsy. We have the deaf national teams, both men and women. We have power soccer. We have beach futsal. So it's so much happening. And obviously, like the men's and women's national team, they are the drivers of attention. They get all the attention almost. And part of our job is to give those extended and youth national teams more of a spotlight, more love. And right now the social team is just me and a coordinator, and I'm so thankful she's around because she has done a great job like highlighting those extended national teams and the youth teams, while I put more of a focus on the senior national teams.
And we talked a little about this earlier before we got going, but what are the goals of a national governing body, in particular, U.S. Soccer in this case?
Well, like our you'll see it in every job posting that we have. Our goal is to grow the sport and to making soccer the most preeminent sport in America. And I think, like, obviously since 1994, we've made great strides, but I think this upcoming World Cup and 2026 on home soil, I think we will definitely be in the argument for, one of the most preeminent sports in America, at least, if not the most, because, like, we're the only sport in this country with potential for growth, football is at its peak. It'll probably stay at its peak. NBA, like I still listen to a ton of NBA podcasts, and they're like, is the NBA hurting right now? Like, whether it's viewership or whatever, like people are always like, I know, like this new TV deal is like players are gonna like make $80 million a year. It's gonna be nuts. But like the NBA does a good job on thriving on drama, but like there's always that discussion. It's like, is the play diminishing? Is it exciting? Like, how do you keep that excitement through 82 games? And then baseball, it's the same discussion. Like, yeah, I know like that the Phillies and the Astros are getting ready to start the World Series, but like, do I care? No. Did I go to like 10 Cubs games? Yes, because I was born and raised a Cubs fan, and I love living in Chicago. I love Wrigley Field, but like baseball is struggling in some sense. Since it's hockey, I know you're wearing a Ducks hat, but like I've never been interested in hockey. So like soccer, there's the potential that just other sports do not have. So our main goal is to make soccer the most preeminent sport in America, and that's from the
what does that mean though, Cody?
The pro leagues, the grassroots youth levels. It's just, and I think that's where it all starts, is those youth levels and keeping kids interested in soccer as they grow up. So they're choosing soccer over playing football or basketball. And that's a huge part of the federation. Is like, we are a nonprofit, and that factors in growing those youth programs.
And so, because you can't necessarily think about the success of the sport of soccer in the U.S. is not necessarily tied to, attendance or viewership for Major League Soccer. That's part of it, but it's to your point, it's like, how many kids are playing soccer? What do the grassroots organizations look like? How many youth leagues are out there? How many competitive clubs are out there? How many fans identify themselves? How many people identify themselves as a soccer fan, whether or not they're MLS fans or, fans of a team in La Liga or the Premier League or a USL or NWSL, whatever it might be.
Even just like, you mentioned that it's not necessarily about like what's happening here, but like the interest. And like, I think about being in high school, like the access to professional soccer was so limited. Like, totally. I remember getting up at 7 a.m. and watching Fox Soccer Channel, and then they would go from Premier League to Serie A, and that was it. That was all you got. And then like Tuesdays and Wednesdays, you could get Champions League on ESPN, but that was like all the soccer that was available to you. Now you can watch for not that much money. You can watch any league in the world pretty much. Like, Bundesliga and La Liga are included in ESPN's like ESPN's Plus package, which was what, $5 a month. I have the Hulu bundle, so I don't know what I'm paying. But I mean, you have 2 or 3 Premier League games on USA or NBC every week. So like the access to just watching soccer has changed so much just in the last like 10 to 15 years.
And what do you think about then as we get into something like World Cup, where even people who would not call themselves soccer fans become soccer fans, or at least for a few weeks, and put their USA hat on, or whatever country they may be supporting? Like, do you guys look at that in a segmented fashion when it comes to planning social media strategy? Like the rest of the time when it's not a World Cup year, or not close to a World Cup, where it's like, okay, we have our diehard fans now, or are people just fans of anytime the USA does something good, like they'll gravitate to you? Like, how do you think about those spikes, and we're gonna get all these new eyeballs, and how can we get our goals to accomplish our goals during that time period when we have their attention?
Yeah, we break them down into avids, casuals, and emerging fan bases. And like the avids are going to care no matter what. Our goal for this upcoming World Cup is to make the casuals and the emerging fan base know who Matt Turner is, know who Weston McKennie is.
Mm-hmm.
Even Christian Pulisic. Christian Pulisic's playing at one of the biggest clubs in the world. And he's you see him on TV all the time right now in the VW commercial, but like, yeah, making his face just as recognizable as a LeBron James or a Patrick Mahomes or a Serena Williams, like making sure like that. I think that plays into our goal of making soccer the most preeminent sport in America. Is like, yeah, Messi and Ronaldo are popular here, but like we want an American player to be just as recognizable in our own country as those two.
Yeah. And how important is, I think we definitely see that both on the men's side, certainly on the women's side, where I think,
certainly on the women's side, like you have Pino and Alex, and, she's been retired a year now, but Carly Lloyd, like those are recognizable figures. Abby Wambach's another example of just like we want to definitely have that on the men's side, but like continue to have more of those faces on the women's side. Like after next summer, I don't think there's any reason why like a Sophia Smith or a Mallory Pugh can't be on that level.
Totally.
They're or Katarina Macario. They're so skilled. They have just amazing personalities. Like they're engaging. So like I would hope that, we do our job and the team performs well next summer in Australia, New Zealand. And, those are the next wave of household names, is the Mal Pughs, the Sophia Smiths, the Katarina Macarios. Obviously Rose Lavelle is up there too, scoring a game or a match winner last World Cup final. So, I think the sky's the limit with kind of this youth movement that the women's national team is having. And also like the men's team is not old. They're going to be one of the youngest teams at the World Cup. Like Christian Pulisic, I think he just turned 24. So like he's I wouldn't even say he's in his prime yet. He's got his prime ahead of him. So does Weston McKennie and Brennan Aronson and Matt Turner's, just getting his feet wet at Arsenal, and like hopefully he becomes a star over there and becomes the pride of North London.
And it's funny to think back to like the way that we think about the NBA being a superstar driven league, and fans oftentimes become fans of players before they're fans of the team. And you can kind of look at that through the lens of that for soccer, but at the same time, everyone is a USA fan that lives in the USA for the most part. So they all have the same team. So like, are you guys oftentimes thinking about how can we create, like it's just as valuable to create Alex Morgan fans and Christian Pulisic fans as it is to create, USA soccer fans, US soccer fans. Like I'm thinking about putting this like having the superstar players be an entry point for those casual fans or emerging fans to become more diehard, become more avid.
Yeah, for sure. Like I think if you can entice somebody to become a Weston McKennie fan, then they're gonna end up supporting Juventus
Yeah.
and then they're going to support the national team as well. I think they go hand in hand, but like as you talked about it, like we are a national team. I was talking with somebody about this the other day. Like I kind of miss the locality of it all. Like being in Portland, being in Minnesota, you could rely on like some like regional
Yeah, you have your own little quirks.
flavors. Yeah, regional quirks, regional nuances, and we don't necessarily have that on the national team level because we are a very like land size, like a huge country, and just like the cultural diversity of the regions of the country and backgrounds of the country. We like, not to be cliche, but like it is a melting pot. There's just so much,
Yeah.
like so much happening in this country, like even like politically, like you've got to be careful a little bit too.
That's gotta make it so difficult to sit down and try to figure out like what kind of content do we want to have ready, what kind of cultural references do we want to make, what kind of memes should we use, what kind of voice do we want to have. Like, do you almost have to throw that out the window and say, hey, we have to try our best to be everything to everybody and then in this entire country, and that kind of holds you back a little bit from taking part in some of those trends.
Yeah, exactly. Like I referenced earlier, like we would always pick on the Lakers when I worked for the Blazers. Like you can't do that at the national team level because it's like it comes off as xenophobic sometimes, or it could come off as xenophobic, and that's not great. So like I generally just avoid like even just mentioning our opponents other than like a good game England or a good game Spain from the games that we just had, or like just referencing as like what a crowd here for us and the Lionesses is. Yeah, I think that's another thing to think about on the national team level is like you can't have necessarily that banter back and forth like you can in the club setting. And I want to hit back. I kind of skipped over this, but you asked it was part of your question earlier. Is like the differences between like working for your normal sports team and like the national teams is like you don't get to work with these players every day. You get to work with them for 10 days every 6 weeks, I think is what it averages out to. So like it's kind of hard to build those relationships in such a short time. Like I feel like I've spent double the time just because of the way the FIFA windows have worked. I feel like I've spent double the time with the women's national teams of the men. So like I'm going into the World Cup right now. I'm like, I like these players recognize my face. They know what I do, but like I only have like have had like real like genuine like connection moments with only probably a handful of them. But like the women's national team, like I felt that way until like we were in Mexico for a month, and then like these players get to know you, and like you see them every day for a month straight, 6 weeks straight, and you build that connection, and it makes creating content with them that much easier.
Yeah, it matters so much to have those relationships and to be able to know like who's up for what and who's not up for what, and it's got to be tough when you get everyone together only so often for those, and when they are together, they are extremely focused and extremely busy on a huge international event. So I can totally hear that for sure. I want to hear a little bit about, and just a couple of minutes left with Cody Sharrett, social manager for U.S. Soccer. We'll have this episode's set plays, our quick hitter questions coming up in a moment. But you have a very lean team there that you can only staff up. I guess it was first off like was looking to staff up for such a huge event like World Cup. And does that force you also to be a little more cognizant or choosy in where we want to spend our time, what platforms make the most sense for us, what content we can templatize, and what content needs that personal touch? It's like, how do you go about operating with that lean team day to day, and then also what does that look like when you can scale up when the time calls for it?
For sure. Like I've never been like overwhelmed with like the publishing side of it, but like I think we've got a good brand team. They're always like willing to work with us and like hear our ideas, and vice versa. I hear their ideas and I'm like, let's run with that. But like it's our video team. Our video team's great. Like so each team has its dedicated videographer, then we'll have a second videographer each camp. But like for World Cup qualifying, we would bring in like 6 to 8 like freelance video people, and we'd probably have 3 or 4 photo shooters just dedicated to us per game. Like World Cup qualifying was so much fun because like it really feels like a team there. So like we've got two video like team managers, and like I said, each team has its own videographer, and then we'll have a second videographer in each camp. But like during World Cup qualifying, it was kind of a cool atmosphere to see like such a big team working to create good content. And at the World Cup it will be similar, but like obviously with some of the FIFA restrictions and like the expenses of getting to Qatar and staying in Qatar, like it won't be as huge as we had for some of our World Cup qualifiers at home.
And what platforms you guys most focus on? And then to a kind of related point, like, do you guys like what role do you think of U.S. soccer, especially during a World Cup event where you're going to have every sports media adjacent account out there trying to provide their own content or their own take on things? Like, what is the role of U.S. soccer as an account? Like, what do you want people following you for that they are not going to follow, like, whatever, BR Football for example?
We're going to have access to the team that none of those other outlets have. So like that's a huge responsibility, is like showing that behind the scenes, showing the like one of our themes is brotherhood on the team, and like that's always showing that like it's a young group of hungry players that are near the same age group, and like they all just like kind of vibe together, and it's showing that it's a family. Like, you know, you have so many people, you know, that are from different backgrounds, whether it's Yunus Musa and Christian Pulisic and Weston McKennie, Tyler Adams, Brendan Aronson, like all very different backgrounds, but like together working as one is like, that's the story we want to tell. It's like that they are a brotherhood, and like it's a diverse team too, like so many different unique stories. So like that's our role is to show what those other outlets can. And you know, like something that we haven't talked about yet, which is, you know, something that is like for me just totally mind-blowing coming from the NBA is like we can't just publish our own highlights. We can't have videographers on the field at the World Cup. FIFA is very strict about video rights. So like, yeah, I'm gonna have to share either FIFA highlights or Fox Soccer highlights as the rights holder. So you know, that's just a nuance of working in soccer, is like having to strategize around that and really making the most of what you can do.
And I love the idea of the storytelling of each player too. It kind of reminds me a little bit of like the approach that we often see like NBC Sports take during the Olympics. Is we want you to know the background of these players. We want you to know that X player grew up whatever in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and they're just like you, and they grew up to become an international like star in their sport. And like, I guess it's a matter of balancing that. Yes, we want people to probably come away hoping they are a fan of a Christian Pulisic or a Brendan Aronson, or continue to follow them in their overseas playing time. But it's certainly a balance, I imagine, of pushing the superstars who are going to get more predictable engagement, I guess, when you put it out on general social, versus telling the story of whatever, the backup goalkeeper that might not play a game but still has a story worth telling, or the last guy on the bench who might not play a game but still has a story worth telling, and they are, you know, living the dream just as much. Is that an important part to make sure that everyone has their story told, and you know, not necessarily just make it all about the half dozen players that fans may know their name?
I can't give too much away, but yes, you will hear a story from every player that is on that World Cup roster, an in-depth story.
Beauty.
Yeah. But yeah, and you mentioned platforms. Obviously, like Instagram is like the biggest engagement driver, as even though that kind of dwindles every few months as they change their algorithm. It's been kind of messed up this year. We just launched our TikTok. It's one TikTok for the whole federation. So it's nice to see, a variety of content there, whether it's men's, women's, youth, extended national teams. And then like Facebook is still, I won't say king, but Facebook is where the people are. Like you can rip on Facebook all you want, but like there's an audience there. And Twitter, it is what it is. We'll see how it changes.
In the Musk era.
In the Musk era, but Twitter is where your voice, I think, shines, and Twitter is the place to, kind of be more creative with that voice, where Instagram is all about visuals.
Are there others that you have your eye on sometimes, whether you guys are active on them or not? Like you mentioned, especially with NBA, you mentioned Reddit earlier, and I'm sure there's some soccer fans on there, or YouTube. I know you and I talked about. Twitch is out there. Discord is. You might have some diehard soccer fan groups on Discord. So, do you have to keep your eye on those and kind of see what the vibe of the fan base is, or really the majority?
I do, but it seems like, especially compared to the NBA, soccer Reddit is. I mean, it's more club focused, but like national team soccer Reddit is just so less active than NBA Reddit. It kind of makes me sad because like that's where I got a lot of ideas. Working in the NBA is Reddit. It's just like, oh yeah, we could do that on our channel. Like, let's do it. Or like, this is what they're talking about. Let's play into it. So yeah, that's tough. YouTube, like we talked about it earlier. It's like, it's the second most powerful search engine in the world. So it's like people are going there to look for something rather than you serving it to them. You know what I mean? Like
not so much discovery.
So, yeah, exactly. I go on there and like I watch old concerts on there.
Do we need, like you mentioned that idea of like the super fan cohorts on a Reddit? Like would you want that? Would you want to have more of these like non-affiliated groups of fans who are not affiliated with U.S. soccer at all, but are sort of like giving that? I mean, I don't want to use this divisive example, but I'm going to, like the sort of like Barstool Sports type treatment where they're like having fun at the and talking about these sports, but it's like a cultural community type thing or a movement type thing.
Yeah, I think that would be great. Like right now, like a lot of the conversation is very straightforward. It's about who's making the roster or what lineup we're going to play or who scored for their club this weekend. Like it's not the entertaining discussion,
Yeah.
Like the NBA, it's like the NBA, like I said, just it does a good job of thriving on drama.
Totally. I mean, it's a joke. It's a running joke that fans enjoy the off the court stuff more than the actual games itself sometimes.
No, like I 100% agree with that. I listen to multiple NBA podcasts a week, but I probably only watch in total one game a week. I love the drama part of the NBA. Like part of me is glad that soccer doesn't necessarily have that, but part of me kind of wishes there was something there to play up, but it is what it is.
Hey, well, we got USA versus England on Black Friday, so if there's any chance for drama in this World Cup group stage, that may be it right there.
It's going to be fun. I can't wait.
We will leave it there, Cody. We'll have some more fun with you coming up in our set plays segment. The first episode's Shareable Stat coming up right now. So good chatting with Cody Sharrett, social media manager for U.S. Soccer. So much good information from him. Really enjoyed being able to pick his brain and looking ahead to what the U.S. men's national team, U.S. Soccer, will look like on social during the World Cup, during, before, after, beyond. It's a really critical period for soccer in the United States as we look ahead to the 2026 World Cup as well. But first we have this one, and it's a huge opportunity for soccer in the States, for American soccer players abroad, for the Major League Soccer as well, and just really cool to hear some insight from Cody and what to expect in the weeks and days to come, depending on when you're listening to this. But we're going to have some more fun with Cody and with our quick-hitting questions. But first, this episode's Shareable Stat. And why not? This episode's Shareable Stat has to do with the World Cup. And it is the astounding stat that there's an estimated 5 billion people in the world that will watch some of the World Cup soccer matches. $5 billion. Yes, I think everyone knows that soccer is the biggest sport in the world by a country mile, but it still is astounding to think that 5 billion people estimated will watch some of the World Cup. I can't even wrap my head around it. So it gets you thinking, though, of this massive thing that a lot of people in the States will, of course, be looking at as well. What is the role, or should there be a place where your team, your organization, your players can fit into the conversation? And, in this podcast recently, we talked about finding those points of intersection where your fans, your consumers, your followers, what is the relevant connection to this huge global event that, especially if you're a sports organization, there is a good chance that a big chunk, if not the vast majority by a mile, are at least aware of, if not, avidly watching the U.S. matches, or, all the matches, or as many as they can at least. So what is that point of intersection that you can find that doesn't feel forced, that feels relevant as well to your strategic goals and objectives? Yes, we've seen, having players present their World Cup pool or their brackets. We look at also how can you use that local identity. Are there players on the U.S. team that are fans of your team, or that are from your state or your town? And how can you latch onto that and give fans a reason to care even more, and have them care in a way that intersects with their fandom of your team or your organization? So there's not a single thing that you should do to try to quote unquote capitalize on this massive global event that, yes, you're not going to reach all 5 billion of those people that will watch from the World Cup. But how can you try to make those fans that are fans of your team a little bit more fans of your team, that are more casual fans, that are diehard fans of the World Cup? How can you bring them closer to your organization as well during this World Cup? Just a cool thing to talk about and think about. I'm sure a lot of teams and organizations have already had those conversations well in advance of the start of matches, and hopefully as the U.S. goes along, there'll be even more opportunity through the group stage and hopefully the knockout stage to latch on and take advantage of that passion, that emotion that is truly unlike any other when it comes to a global event, and certainly an enormous global event, the biggest global event in the sports world, as 5 billion people estimated will be watching some of the World Cup in 2022. So really cool, shareable stat. Talk about it, think about it, try to take action on it. More importantly, stick around for our set plays segment with Cody Sharrett of U.S. Soccer. Right back in the episode's shareable stat, and I am joined on the line once again by Cody Sharrett. He is the social media manager for U.S. Soccer, the U.S. Soccer Federation. Cody, you kicked ass in your interview. Are you now ready to line up and take some set plays?
I haven't hydrated yet, but it's going to be a little bit rough. So
you need a hydration break.
We'll see what happens.
Number one for you, Cody. Tell me, from your time doing a little bit of broadcasting at Indiana, what was like your most memorable line or call or signature call? Like what sticks out to you when you think about those memories?
So I didn't explain this in the interview, but like I did a season of traveling with the IU volleyball team and doing their play-by-play. And it was the year after they went to the Sweet 16, but the next year was like bottom of the Big Ten. And we were winless in the Big Ten going into senior night. And like, I actually teared up calling the win over Iowa on senior night just because it had been such a long season. But I don't remember what I said. I'm sure you can pull up the archives somewhere. Please don't search my name on YouTube because there are some volleyball calls on there. But yeah, another broadcasting thing that sticks out from IU is the last project I worked on was IU Baseball Media Day, where like you actually get to like go through drills, take ground balls. I didn't get to take batting practice, but then like the last thing was like an interview with Tracy Smith, who was the coach there. Mm-hmm. Then I think he coaches at Michigan now, but IU baseball had a good season previously, and I was like, how are you gonna replace the firepower in your lineup with some of the guys that graduated or went pro? And he's like, I'm not too worried about that. We got a freshman coming in that can really smack the baseball named Kyle Schwarber. So I think he's gonna I think he's gonna carry that load offensively. So that's a cool thing as a Cubs fan.
That's awesome
to look back on. It's like, yeah, he was right.
That's so cool.
And he's still smashing baseballs.
Seriously. No, I was thinking in my head about Schwarber when you're talking about IU baseball, and that's awesome. And volleyball, I'm sure there were plenty of like lines with digs and aces and blocks and all that. A fun sport, very difficult to call for sure, broadcasting wise. Number two, this should be a good one. tell me your favorite NBA player and favorite WNBA player to work with from like a social or content perspective.
NBA, it's easy. Dame just
That's
just
awesome.
the person he is, and just like everything he does on the floor, it makes it so easy to build content around him. I loved Dame, and in the same fashion, Anthony Edwards is up there as well. But like personally, I'll always love Karl Anthony Towns. He's
Nice.
a good dude, and you know, just a really he's a good hang is what I'll say. Favorite WNBA player to work with, obviously, like off the court, like there's no nicer person than the GOAT, Sylvia Fowles.
Love that.
Just one of the most lovable people you'll find on the face of the earth. But I also like content wise, I loved Nafisa Collier. She's
nice,
great to work with, and I always just love one of my signatures working for the Lynx was making puns out of her name, Fee. So like double feature or song like All Eyes on Fee, Tupac lyrics. So I always enjoyed working with her.
That's fantastic.
To Money Moan, Simone Augustus was amazing too.
Nice. Yeah, I will say it was awesome to see all the Sylvia Fowles stuff as she was getting feted during her last year here recently. That was great.
I think my favorite ever line from a player though was like, one of the early media days. I introduced myself to Simone Augustus, and I said like, I work for the team. She's like, no, you work with the team. So that that's one of the coolest things a player has ever said.
That's so awesome. Yeah, you're part of the team. That's fantastic. Yeah. Number 3, we're gonna go back to your MLS soccer days, or Major League Soccer. That's redundant. MLS days.
It's still MLS Soccer MLS Soccer.
That's right. That's awesome. All right. Your favorite piece of content or social media post from your time with the Columbus Crew.
This sounds really, really dumb, but like it was when the Crew had Sebastian Miranda and the Vancouver Whitecaps had Sebastian Letou, and we just TJ. I don't know if I name dropped TJ Ansley or not earlier, but he was my boss at the Crew, and then at the Trailblazers, we had this dumb idea of making a poll of who's your favorite Sebastian Miranda, Sebastian Letou, Sebastian from Little Mermaid, Sebastian Bach from Skid Row. And I don't like it, probably did no engagement, but it was just like something stupid we did in 5 minutes, and it's one that we come back to and laugh at.
Oh, that's great. Now in my head now I'm trying to think of like which players on the US soccer teams that would make most sense for, to try like who's your favorite Christian or something. I don't know. That's one though. Number 4. This is a good one now. I'm always interested to hear what our guests think about this stuff. So tell me the most important kind of SM sports like lesson or insight or guiding principle that pops in your head right now as I'm asking this.
Like, I'll admit I used to be a little stuck up, like judging what I'd see from other teams or whatever. But the lesson and something that I've learned is that there's no right way, there's no wrong way, there's just your way. Like other teams are like, you don't, I mean, yeah, you can find out, but like you can find out the staffing situation at another team, or you can find out that like, yeah, they're really restricted by their front office. They can't do these things. They don't have the access, or they don't have designers to make cool shit, like, so yeah, I would say that there's no right way, there's no wrong way, there's just your way.
I totally support that. I mean, it's very tempting sometimes to because there's no scoreboard, but all the stuff is public, and like you see what everyone else is doing, and it's easy to say, well, like, why are they doing that and we're not, or why are we doing this? And it's like you mentioned, everyone has different sets of variables they're working under, different resources, different goals, different restrictions, and it's a huge part of that still gets overlooked sometimes. All right, number 5. We may have mentioned some of this already. So I'm interested to kind of hear you double down a little bit. Tell me which social platform is the most consistently successful for U.S. Soccer, and you can define successful as much as you want. And also, which platform do you kind of have your eye on for future growth? Which I may have an idea there. Where you're going to go with that one.
I mean, currently Instagram's the most. It's consistently inconsistent, like, but like that's where the bulk of people are there in Facebook. Facebook is still so surprising, just like this, the engagement and web traffic that Facebook drives. But obviously the highest ceiling, we just launched our TikTok. We've had some success on it so far, but I think that I'm hoping it blows up after the World Cup or during the World Cup.
Oh yeah.
So.
And everyone talks about TikTok as being like the stuff that you expect will do really well. Sometimes doesn't, and then vice versa. There's nothing really to figure out with it. You just kind of have to start throwing darts and see what fits, I guess.
It's mind blowing, the stuff that is done the best for us. It's not like using, popular TikTok sounds or anything like that. It's mic'd up content, like Gio Reyna just running around panting at training. It's like, all right, people are into this, I guess.
Oh, I love those early light bulbs that you can just iterate on, and it should be fun to watch. Check out the U.S. Soccer TikTok throughout the next few weeks here and going forward. All right, number 6 we're on here with Cody Sharrett of U.S. Soccer. Tell me the most memorable game that you worked for any of the NBA or WNBA teams you work with. The Blazers, Lynx, Timberwolves. What was the most memorable game that you worked?
Blazers, got to be Dame's. I think it was his first 50-point game against the Warriors. Me and TJ and Brian Matzat, we still have the clip that we'll share occasionally. I think is when Dame hit his 50. Like the broadcaster at the time, his call is like, Lillard heat check. Oh, like one of the funniest calls. I love it. But yeah, that was super memorable. And obviously, moving on to the second round against the Clippers, and then the playoff series against the Warriors were amazing. Lynx, I got there after they won their 4th championship, so I gotta say the first round of the playoffs in the bubble, COVID bubble, beating Phoenix. Like I've already mentioned, I hated the Phoenix Mercury so much working for the Lynx, and Syl had come back from injury and she just wasn't ready. And I've got goosebumps and I'm starting to tear up just thinking about it. Like I captured a photo of just Syl in tears, like hugging Nafisa Collier after that. And then Damiris Dantas, like that was one of the best games she's ever had. And like we weren't sure if she was going to play because there was like a false positive COVID test right before that. So like we were like, she's not going to play. We're doomed. And then like it came down to the wire. We beat the Mercury, Diana Taurasi. It was great. That was a fun game. And then Timberwolves. I'm going to have to say Derrick Rose. We're coming up on the 4-year anniversary of it. Derrick Rose, Halloween night, 50 points. Amazing. Like there was nobody at that game, but it was just amazing. And like I didn't have the right lens and got a shitty photo of him crying after the game, but like still like I'm like, that's a sick photo. And I have him like screaming. He blocked I think it was Dante Exum was shooting to tie. We were playing the Jazz and he got a piece of it, blocked it. Just him hugging the game ball, walking off the floor. And then after the game, like I sent him, I was giving him photos after the game. Like a guy like that, just saying like, hey man, I appreciate everything you do. This means so much to me. Like that's why you do it. Like, but like, I'll always love Derrick Rose. Like, love that guy.
That's awesome.
That's got to be the most memorable Timberwolves game, I think.
That's so cool. I love hearing that.
And story. The ant dunk. I mean, obviously the ant dunk. I don't know how I was in the right position for that photo, but that blew. When Kevin Hart like posts your photo, like I don't know, like it's still surreal to me, but like
so epic.
And Edwards, I hope he continues his ascent. Like Like I
Hell
said,
yeah.
other than Ja Morant, the most exciting player in the league.
Number 7, we're gonna pick your brain on U.S. soccer players. Tell me the U.S. soccer player with the best social media presence and why.
That's easy. Follow Trinity Rodman on TikTok.
There we
She's great.
go.
She's great. And Alex is great too. Like Alex Morgan's TikTok. She's funny. She shows her personality. She's great. On the men's side, not a lot of them post.
Mhm.
I think on the men's side, like who like gets it. But I think Walker Zimmerman's good. Like
Okay.
he's not afraid to post himself like a guy would do, screaming out his lungs during the bridge of Taylor Swift's All Too Well. So yeah, I'll give it to Walker.
Are you finding a lot of the players, whether it's, certainly sounds like the women are more active overall, is TikTok becoming almost like their main platform, or I mean, they're just balancing TikTok and Instagram? Is TikTok just becoming more important?
I think it's Instagram, and then 1B is TikTok, especially for those two, Trinity Rodman, Alex Morgan. Midge Purse is great on there as well. I love Midge.
Okay. And it's like, I mean, I guess Instagram doesn't have lists like we wish. I wish they would have lists, but I guess you can still somewhat keep track of them. But like with TikTok, like how do you even keep track of what players are posting? Do you like have a following feed and you just go through your following feed, or
yeah,
it's gotta be tough. All right, number 8. It's time for our food question, Cody. You always ask a food question, so tell me, this is gonna be a little different one here. It's a 2-parter. So tell me the first one is the best meal you've had on the road with U.S. soccer so far, wherever it was, any city in the world. And then also part 2 of this is the NBA or WNBA arena with the best press box food outside of Minnesota or Portland, the best one you had on the road. So best one on the road with U.S. soccer, best one on the road with NBA or WNBA based on the press box food.
All right, so I'm fortunate. These are all the U.S. soccer ones are fresh in my mind because I just got back from Europe, and I just want to say we were in Cologne, Germany, and I had pork knuckle. Amazing. Ooh. Like it's crispy on the outside, then it has like a layer of like creamy, like fatty whatever, and then you get to the meat part, and it's amazing. I only ate half of it. It was huge. I had an amazing grilled cheese in London.
Nice.
That's a weird thing to say, is that a grilled cheese was life-changing, but it was. And then we went out in Pamplona, Spain, and obviously you have the jamon iberico, like the ham that's just like carved right off the leg. But then like we had these like torched roasted red peppers that were just like, I think all that was on it was like salt, olive oil, and maybe a little bit of garlic, but those were amazing. And then just everywhere in Europe, the bread is amazing. I don't get it. Like we do something wrong here in America with bread, but the bread over in Europe every time was amazing. And then I told you I was in Monterrey, Mexico for a month for CONCACAF W Championship, and we had our private chef there, Chef T. Shout out! Every meal he makes is amazing. So that's not like eating out abroad, but like the team meals, all of them were amazing.
Eating good.
NBA press boxes would be best. Houston Rockets, Toyota, is it still Toyota Center?
So yeah.
They always had a good spread.
So what give us the like what they have? What do you picture?
I don't know, because it was different both times, but I remember it was a lot of food and it was good. Oh no, scrap that. Detroit, Little Caesars Arena.
Wow.
Hey, there's so much. There's food. There's the wings. There's the cheesy bread. Then they have like a Chinese food option. Ooh. And then a couple other options. Like you gain 10 pounds when you go there. And along the same line, like the first professional sports game I ever worked was I was interning in Boston for a TV station, and they had a credential and nobody wanted to go to, it was Sporting Lisbon and Celtic at Fenway Park. And that was like my first professional sports press box experience. And that Fenway Park press box, like the food, anything you could ask for.
Damn.
It's amazing. Yeah.
All right.
But like, yeah, I know I said Houston to start with. Houston's good, but like Detroit, Little Caesars Arena is on a different level.
How about that? Pistons coming through in the clutch. I like it.
Yeah.
I am ready to eat.
Like, it's not gourmet food. It's Little Caesars, but like Little Caesars is pretty damn good.
I come down to the end here with Cody. Tell me, number 9, the emerging technology in the fan engagement social media space that you're most optimistic about. There's a lot of technology coming out there, whether it's Web3, NFT, AR, VR, game, everything in between, metaverse. Like, what are you most optimistic about for the future of fan engagement?
I'm skeptical on AR and just the metaverse in general, but I don't know. I don't know if it's not technology, but I think just the broadcast aspect of it. There's going to be, you're already seeing it. There's going to be more Manning cast type content where
totally
you don't have to listen to the play-by-play. Like I'm shocked that there hasn't been an option yet for this soccer-wise, where they bring in celebrities to talk about the World Cup. Obviously, it's a huge prestigious event, but like that's a way you bring people in, is to, like, John Hamm is in every Fox Soccer promo for this World Cup as Santa Claus. There was another one released today. Like, who wouldn't want to hear like John Hamm talking about the World Cup?
Totally.
Like, if you're just a casual, like, obviously if you're a diehard avid fan, like, you want Ian Dark or John Strong on the play-by-play. But like, I don't know. I think there's going to be a lot more of that type of content, and that's just going to play more into social clips as well.
Hell yeah. We'll have the Ted Lasso cast.
Yeah, exactly. Jason Sudeikis, like, him and Aaron Rodgers were at the game at Wembley. Like, who wouldn't want to hear what those guys are talking about during the game?
Amazing. All right, last one for you, Cody. This might be the hardest question, though. Tell me.
No, it's easy. This is easy.
All right, so I'll pose the question. What's going to happen next, or first, rather? Indiana men's basketball, the Hoosiers win a national title, or Indiana football makes the college football playoff, including the expanded field of 12 coming in the next couple of years here.
Like, that, I've sold all my Indiana football stock. Like, I was optimistic during the COVID season, and it's just plummeted since then. So I got to go Indiana men's basketball. I know it was a tough end of the season, but I've got faith in Mike Woodson. I hope Trace is good this year, like, living up to the hype. I think Elite Eight is doable this year. They're projected to be top of the Big Ten, but the Big Ten has had a rough go of it in the tournament in recent years. But I think I'm bullish on IU men's basketball in the next few years.
It's been a long time since they cut down the nets for the Hoosiers, but hey, it could happen. Trace Jackson-Davis going to win National Player of the Year, and who knows what could happen.
Listen, I'm just glad, like, my freshman year was Tom Crean's first year at IU, and we went 6-25. And then my senior year, we had the buzzer beater over Kentucky and Anthony Davis, and that's probably the most memorable game I've ever been in attendance for. It was amazing.
Oh, one of the for someone watching on TV too, one of the best broadcast calls that you'll.
I'm still hungover from that game.
All right, Cody, we scored multiple goals off of our set plays. Now it's your chance to take over the podcast and tell us your social media all-star follow. Just tell us who they are, what platform they're on, and why they're following.
Social, I've already shouted her out. Follow Trinity Rodman on TikTok. She's hilarious, and I think, you know, like, the sky is the limit for her. Like, soccer wise, she's still young. Obviously, you know, killed it in NWSL last year, but, you know, every time I open TikTok and see she's posted something, I laugh and send it to somebody.
There we go. I'm gonna go follow her right now. That's awesome. And how about you? Where can we find you, as well as all things US Soccer across digital social media?
Okay, so follow USMNT, USWNT, US Soccer, USYNT, US Soccer _ENT if you're into the futsal, the beach soccer. Those are the Twitter and Instagram handles for US Soccer on TikTok. And then my name, just Cody Sharrett, all one word, on Twitter and Instagram.
Well, we will link it all up. And Cody, just cannot thank you enough for giving us some of your time today. It's an extremely busy time for you all with US Soccer. Look forward to following it all through your and others' eyes, through the handles throughout the U.S. Men's team's run in Qatar. Hopefully it lasts a long time. And thanks so much again for giving us your time today.
Yeah, I'm hoping I don't come back here till December 19th, and then there's like a very, very cold ticker tape parade in New York. That's the goal.
Hell yeah. Thank you so much again to Cody Sharrett, social media manager for U.S. Soccer. Enjoyed learning so much from him about his time in the NBA as well, his time in Major League Soccer, and certainly in his time behind the helm of the U.S. Soccer social handles. Just a huge operation there. And really cool thing about truly what the goals and strategies of U.S. Soccer really means. They want you to support U.S. Americans playing soccer, wherever that may be. They want you to be, a Leeds United fan if you are a fan, so that you follow along Brendan Aronson. They want you to cheer on Matt Turner at Arsenal. They want you to look at Christian Pulisic at Chelsea, or prior to that with Borussia Dortmund. And of course, they want to see the sport grow domestically on the grounds of the U.S. as well, and that means youth soccer. That means up-and-coming leagues like USL1, USL2, USL League Championship. It means Major League Soccer. It means the NWSL. It means college soccer and other competitive club programs. There really is so much to it, and it's not just about trying to get more fans of MLS and trying to get those viewership numbers up. It truly is. Wherever there is an American playing soccer, or the chance of Americans playing soccer in the States, abroad, they want you, being aware of it and hopefully supporting it and making you an even bigger fan of the sport, whatever that might mean for you. As Cody says, it's to make soccer the most preeminent sport in the United States. And really cool to pick his brain today. And I look forward to watching as much of the U.S. In the World Cup as possible. As I state this, as I speak, it is on U.S. match, U.S. versus Wales Eve, and hopefully it's a good start. But that'll do it for this episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. Thanks again for joining. As always, I am your host, Neil Horowitz. You can find me at LinkedIn at Neil Horowitz, where I post more content, on Twitter at NJH287, also the website, dsmsports.net, and of course, follow along for future episodes coming up on your favorite podcast platform. Until next time, this is Neil Horowitz signing off for the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast.